India recently pulled off something pretty incredible, building over 100 million toilets in just a few years. But what happens after the toilet? Well, today we're going to dive into the next giant leap in the country's sanitation journey, a move that goes way beyond just toilets to a vision of total, sustainable cleanliness for rural India.
Okay, so to really get where this is all going, you've got to look back at what's already been done. Phase 1 of the Swachh Bharat mission, that's the Clean India mission, was absolutely massive. In fact, it's been called the largest behavior change program in the entire world. We're talking about trying to shift social norms around sanitation on a scale that's never been seen before.
And the big number from that first phase, it's just staggering. Over 100 million toilets were built across the country in only 5 years. The whole point was to make rural India open defecation free, or ODF for short, by making sure every single household had access to a toilet.
So that brings us to this really crucial question. After you build 100 million toilets, is that it? Is the job finished? I mean, you can't just declare victory and walk away, right? The answer, of course, is no. And that's exactly where the next, and honestly even more ambitious chapter of this story begins.
Well, this next chapter, it's called ODF+. This is Phase 2 of the Swachh Bharat mission, and it's all about moving past just having a toilet to achieving a whole new level of clean.
So what exactly is ODF+? Well, it's got two main goals. First, making sure all those gains from Phase 1 actually stick, that people keep using their toilets. And second, broadening the mission to take on the much, much bigger challenge of managing all of a village's waste. We're talking both solid and liquid, to get to a state of total cleanliness.
This really breaks down the difference, doesn't it? Phase 1 was a laser-focused mission. Stop open defecation, give people toilets. But Phase 2, ODF+, builds on that. It expands the scope from just one issue to managing a village's entire sanitation ecosystem. I mean, we're talking about a huge leap in just how complex and ambitious this whole thing is.
Which, of course, brings us to the real heart of the challenge for ODF+, dealing with, well, literal mountains of waste. See, once you stop focusing only on human waste from toilets, you start to realize the sheer scale of the other kinds of waste in rural India.
All right, let's start with plastic. Think about this. Back in 2019, India was generating over 3.3 million metric tons of plastic waste every single year. And that's not just ugly to look at, it's a massive environmental problem, with all that plastic contaminating soil and water for hundreds of years.
And then you've got the liquid waste. There's an estimated 18,000 million liters of what's called gray water. That's all the water from bathing, doing laundry, washing dishes, generated in rural areas every single day. And if that's not managed properly, you get stagnant pools of water, which are basically breeding grounds for disease.
Okay, so to get a handle on all this, the ODF+ mission is basically fighting a war on 4 fronts. You've got to manage biodegradable waste like food scraps, tackle that plastic waste we just talked about, deal with all that gray water, and finally, safely treat the fecal sludge coming from all those new toilets.
Let's just take gray water, for example. A lot of the time, the secret is simple local tech. Instead of building huge, expensive treatment plants, many villages are using solutions like leach pits. These are just simple structures that let gray water get filtered naturally and safely back into the ground. It's affordable, it works, and the community can manage it themselves.
And what about all the waste from the toilets, the fecal sludge? Well, the job definitely doesn't end when you flush. All the waste sitting in those pits and septic tanks has to be safely removed, transported somewhere else, and treated. This is so important for preventing water contamination and protecting everyone's health. It's about completely closing the loop on sanitation.
But here's the thing. You can build all the pits, buy all the trucks, and set up all the treatment plants you want, but none of it works without the most critical ingredient. And that secret ingredient isn't technology, it's people power. I mean, the official mission manual puts it perfectly. The goal is to create a people's movement, or a Jan Andolan. See, this isn't some program being pushed from the top down. It's designed to be driven by individuals and communities who actually feel a sense of ownership over how clean their villages are.
So how do you create a people's movement? The official strategy is something called IEC. It stands for Information, Education, and Communication. And what it recognizes is a really basic truth. Lasting change isn't just about building stuff. It's about changing people's daily behaviors, their habits, and the social norms around cleanliness.
So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, IEC means things like holding community meetings to teach people how to separate their waste, or using traditional wall art to share messages about sanitation in a way that feels familiar and really resonates with people.
And who's leading this charge? A dedicated army of what they call swachh, which literally means cleanliness motivators. These are basically the foot soldiers of the mission, going village by village, house by house, to explain, motivate, and help drive this change from the ground up.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, it's clear that ODF Plus isn't just some cleanup campaign. It's a really comprehensive long-term blueprint for creating sustainable cleanliness in rural areas.
The whole thing is really built on 3 key pillars to make sure it lasts. First, you've got the physical and technical side, using tech that's affordable and makes sense for a village. Second is the social and behavioral part, making sure that being clean just becomes the new normal. And third is knowledge management, constantly learning from what works and sharing those lessons to make the whole system better over time.
So at the end of the day, we're looking at an effort on an unbelievable scale, going from just giving people toilets to engineering a complete people-powered system for total rural cleanliness. And it really makes you wonder, if they can pull this off, could India's playbook for rural sanitation become the model for the rest of the world?